So here's the question. As a real estate investor, how do you build a business that you're excited to show up to every day while you constantly grow your stream of passive income that you and your family can depend on for life without having to leave your computer or even live somewhere that houses are affordable? That's the question, and this podcast will give you the answers. Welcome to the Virtual Real Estate Investing Podcast with your host, Brian Elwood.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the podcast. I'm driving back home from a session with one of my coaching clients, and one of the main things that we dealt with in the session was shiny object syndrome. He has it, I have it, and I bet if you are listening to this podcast, then you probably have it too. If you don't know what shiny object syndrome is, then either you've been living for under a rock, or maybe you're not an entrepreneur. But entrepreneurs know what I mean by this. It's basically the tendency to jump from one thing to another, from one idea to another, and never actually stick with something and never actually finish anything. And I've had this my whole life, basically. And because of my shiny object syndrome, I was never able to get results in anything I did. I had so many different jobs, different businesses I started, and I would just scrap them very soon after starting them and start a new one. And it's sort of like if you got in the car and just drove in one direction for a little while, and then you stopped and turned around and drove in another direction, and stopped again and turned around and drove in a different direction once again, what would happen? You would never get anywhere. And that's exactly what's happening to a lot of people in their businesses. And the problem with that is just that you are never going to succeed if you keep changing direction over and over again. So what is the solution? Well, I can tell you how I have learned to cope with my shiny object syndrome. I'm certainly not cured, but I have been able to tame it to some degree. One of the first times I ever had success taming this was when I decided to commit myself to real estate. I remember how convicted I felt about my decision when I made it, because I had had 15 years of dead-end jobs, and I was so sick of just repeating that cycle over and over again. I said, this will never happen again. I'm gonna try this real estate thing out for at least a couple years. I'm not gonna just change it to something new. And guess what? It worked, and I had success. And I can pat myself on the back and tell myself I'm a genius as much as I want, but probably the real reason I had success in real estate is just because I actually stuck with it. For the first time in my life, I stuck with something. I had never stuck with anything before until real estate. But still, even within real estate, I have shiny object syndrome, and I want to go in a million different directions inside of real estate. So the syndrome goes on, and the cure is to continually focus in more and more. There's two things I want to talk about as far as what the cure is for shiny object syndrome. And I'm just going to talk about the first one in this episode, and I'll do a two-parter and talk about the next one in the next episode. So the first cure for shiny object syndrome is to start with something that you are excited about. Basically, it's deep work here. And this is what I worked on with my coaching client today, is figuring out what he's excited about, what gets him out of bed in the morning, and all of that. The problem one of the main reasons that a lot of kind of visionary minded people start things and then they kind of forget about them or just let them go is because they lose their excitement for the thing. You stop and think for a second. How many times have you just gotten real excited about some idea or something you heard, and you come home and you tell your wife or your husband or your business partner, like, this is it, we're going to do this really cool thing and it's going to change everything. It's going to be awesome, right? You go to a seminar, you read a book, whatever. Then what happens? 1 month, 2 months, 3 months goes by. You think about that same idea and there's just not that excitement there, right? It just doesn't feel the same. And that's because, you were all emotional about the idea initially when you had it, but that emotion died off and reality set in. And you weren't really excited about the execution of the idea, all the nuts and bolts that we're going to actually have to go into it in order to make it a reality. So, first of all, you're always going to kind of have waves of excitement. It's going to come and go. And no matter what business idea you choose, there's going to be sucky stuff that you have to deal with and that you don't really like doing. But to set yourself up for a much greater chance of success, it's critical that you figure out what you would be excited about doing, what you would enjoy doing on a day-to-day basis, and you structure your business in that way. If you don't want to answer the phone all day, go on appointments, talk to sellers and get deals, which most people don't really enjoy that, then why the hell are you starting a real estate business? Especially if you're not planning on hiring an acquisition manager to replace you in that role. Why are you going to start a fix and flip business if that would be your actual day-to-day? It's really worth asking yourself these questions, because you can still start a real estate business, but it doesn't have to look the way everyone else's looks. What kind of people do you want to hang out with? What do you want to be doing all day? What kind of stuff do you get excited about? What kind of books do you read and podcasts do you listen to? What kind of stuff can you never stop talking about when you're at the dinner table with your friends who don't care what you're saying and they're getting annoyed because you won't stop talking? What are you talking about in those moments? What topics? That's likely the areas that you're passionate about. So the most fundamental question you can ask yourself is that, and that's the best business decision you can ever make, is to figure out what excites you and what you're passionate about. I've heard Warren Buffett say this, Bill Gates, and Steve Jobs, and they all said that the number one most important business lesson is successful businesses are founded upon passion. I can't stress this enough, guys. And guess what? It's also the cure for shiny object syndrome, because if you're passionate about it, you are going to stick with it. You would do it even if you already had all the money in the world, because you like doing it. It's kind of similar to like when you were a kid. Nobody had to tell you to go ride your bike or to play video games or whatever. You wanted to do that stuff, right? You would do it anyways, like no matter what. It didn't have anything to do with money or whatever. So now that you're an adult and you're all grown up, what's the thing that you would do anyways if you already had all the money? And do not tell me that you would sit on the beach and, just chill out all day and drink margaritas, because you wouldn't. That would get so old after a week or less. You would want to kill yourself. If you're listening to this podcast, I'm guessing you're the person who likes to work, who likes to be productive, who likes to create and add value to the world with your time on earth. And so it doesn't actually matter if you have $0 or $100 million. You're always going to be creating something, working on projects, right? Building businesses, building something. And so it's on you to figure out what that is. What's that thing you would do anyways? And then find a way to monetize that. And hey, maybe I'm talking you out of doing real estate altogether because you secretly want to be an artist or, whatever, a dancer. Like, it doesn't matter. But if you secretly have a passion that you want to go after and it's not real estate, turn this podcast off and go do that now. If it is real estate, if it's about, creating freedom for yourself, and that's awesome, you're in the right place. Thank you guys for listening. And on the next episode, I will go over part 2 of what you need to do to cure shiny object syndrome. See you on the next one. Peace.
Want more? Get your free copy of Brian's book that is changing real estate businesses everywhere. Just go to www.fireyourself.net. Also, register for your free virtual real estate investing online masterclass at virtualinvestingclass.com.